3, 2. Hello and welcome to the 27 Minutes of Heaven we call the D1 Baseball Podcast. I am your host, Michael Patrick Rooney. Want to say thanks to our good friends at Wilson for their partnership throughout the College World Series. If you're in Omaha this week, make sure you visit the Omaha Experience. It's right across from the ballpark. You've got EvoShield, Louisville Slugger, DeMarini, and Wilson all under one roof. Limited edition gloves, bats, gear, and more. It's available only during the College World Series. By the way, Wilson is the equipment provider for both Tennessee and Texas A&M in the finals. Speaking of content providers, I am joined by the great Joe Healy, the great Fitt. Gentlemen, top of the morning to you. Happy CWS finals.
To you too, Runes.
Yeah, thank you.
I enjoy being here with you guys. Most of the time, I prefer to celebrate privately, though.
Fitzy, what say you about the finals? How are you doing?
I'm doing great. We had a good night last night. You know, two off days, always tricky to navigate. I thought we handled it with aplomb, Coach.
Aplomb. That's word of the day. Aplomb, as we
APLOMB.
Get that one. Get that one checked off.
Fitzy had that in his back pocket. Really established the fastball early. Joe, congratulations on your mini putt championship last night. Going with your Colin Deaver Award, really stacking up a Hall of Fame resume over there.
The trophy case is getting full, Runes. What can I say?
May need a new home.
Yeah.
So, hey, boys, before we do Tennessee and A&M, let's do a big picture conversation really quickly. So we are going to have a 5th straight national champion come from the SEC. It's going to be the 6th time in the last 7 seasons that we've completed that an SEC program has won the national title. What's, I think, even more remarkable is that it's 6 different programs. This was in Omaha where we had only 2 conferences out of the 30 represented, 4 ACC teams and 4 SEC teams. And so, I think the cliche question is, how do we feel about that? Is this good for the game? I mean, I want to be more open-ended than that, because I will say this, the game is growing clearly, the interest around the game and the atmosphere here has been awesome. What say you kick us off, Joe? What are your big picture thoughts?
I think the variety of teams, you mentioned the different champions we have. I think you can see that with the excitement we have here for this championship series. I used the evidence of this morning. The box office opened at 10 a.m. to sell SRO tickets, and the line was wrapped around the corner. And so you got 2 fan bases that have never been to this stage. And so they're excited to be here. And don't get me wrong, it was great when LSU fans and Ole Miss fans and Mississippi State fans took over the stadium the last several years. But I think we're going to have something closer, at least, to a 50-50 split. And so when you have 2 fan bases that haven't been here, they're really excited about it. I think that is good for the sport, where we've got these fan bases who are going to have this Omaha experience, whether or not, again, the cliche question is more about the overall health of the sport. I'm more interested just kind of in how this type of situation can be a launching pad for not just these 2 teams, but, Kentucky, for example, right, who hadn't been here. And how does that help those programs moving forward?
Yeah, I'm with you. And I'm more interested in really the individual programs than I am in the conference. Rah, come on. What do conferences even mean anymore with all this realignment stuff?
Great
these
point.
Mega conferences coming in. But you look up at the banners hanging here at the Wilson store. They've got a lot of national champions represented up there. But the thing that jumps out to me is this. For a long time, the SEC had all this, SEC pride, basically because LSU won a bunch of titles, right? Besides Georgia, that first title,
90
in 1990, and then that string of LSU titles. No other SEC program won it all until Vanderbilt in 2014, if I'm not mistaken.
South Carolina too. They had their little run.
I'm sorry, the Gamecock banners are missing, but right. So that was it, right? You had South Carolina with those 3, and then Vanderbilt. And now we've got this string of them, and it's just that variety to me is more impressive than just hanging all your. If this was just one dynasty running through here, stacking up championships, that wouldn't mean as much as you're seeing Florida and Vanderbilt, Mississippi State, and Ole Miss, and one of these teams here. I mean, it's just every year something different. That to me is very impressive.
Yeah, and I think I agree with all those points you all just made. And I would say, the finals is the end of a tournament that was 64 teams. And we did see a lot of really random and awesome results. I think about Evansville winning the Greenville Regional and pressing Tennessee. And, I think the ACC, they're 1-10 versus the SEC in the last 11 times they've played in Omaha. But so many of those games where one pitch swings it. So I'm kind of torn on this. This is a big sample size, a small sample size. I love, Joe, that you mentioned Kentucky, because Kentucky's a school that is not a baseball school per se, but they've shown great interest in baseball, not like explosive interest. Like Tennessee's not some team with a New York Yankees level NIL program, but they just found an identity. They got creative. I mean, who would have thought 10 years ago that Kentucky's baseball program would be, over the last couple of years consistently outplaying Louisville? Like that would have been an unthinkable comment 10 years ago. But so I think I'm not saying that to take a shot at Louisville. I'm saying that to say that things can change.
Yeah.
Just because one team or one program is dominant now doesn't mean it has to stay that way.
And Georgia's another example. Just
Mhm.
a few years ago, I mean, they were trying to get over the hump, and now here they are. And it's well, not in Omaha, but they've clearly taken a step forward. Right. And so just the complexion of that league shifting so dramatically. I mean, it's just it's the depth of it is incredible.
Yep. I do think the overall product in college baseball it's the best it's ever been. As far as players, what do we have? 4 players from last year's draft that have already made it to the big leagues, and not all of them are SEC players. It's I'm going to go off the top of my head, but Skeens and Langford, obviously from LSU and Florida, but then also the kid Joe. You have to help me with the name from Georgetown,
Jake Bloss,
Jake Bloss, and then Nolan Shanuel from Florida Atlantic. So it's interesting. Because the draft is smaller, minor leagues are smaller, we're getting better players to college baseball because schools have invested in the sport. The level of play is up, and so here we are with. And the other point I wanted to reiterate that you guys made is 2 really fired up fan bases for this. We're going to have another first-time champion, which is super cool. No offense to LSU in the 90s, when, never forget, we played there, and right above their dugout and our dugout, the visiting dugout, says Program of the Decade. And that was kind of cool, but I don't know how great that was for the sport that 5 out of those 10 championships were by one program. Actually, it was great for the sport because that fan base is so exceptional. But
and dynasties, I think, are have their place. I think dynasties. That South Carolina dynasty was incredible. It was 3 years in a row to get to the finals and win 2 of them with a special group of players, and that stuff's fun. I think that also is different. Like we talk about the variety being good and fun, but also I think dynasties are too. And it's just I like that there's back and forths.
Yeah, heck yeah. Hey, so let's preview I want to be focused more on the teams than the games necessarily. But before I say that, throughout the College World Series, throughout the summer, all year round, D1Baseball.com is your home for the most in-depth college baseball news, updates, scores, and rankings. Get game analysis, series previews, transfer portal updates, and so much more. Visit D1Baseball.com today. When you get a subscription to SEC Extra or just D1Baseball.com in general, when you check out, hit bracket 30, you get 30% off. Type in the word plum, and if you spell it correctly, you'll get 0% off, but you'll feel better about yourself. Your self-esteem.
For sure. That is correct.
30% better self-esteem is what I can guarantee there. Let's talk about, let's do hitters first. So let's talk about Tennessee, Joe. Who's a hitter that you think is really important? It could be obvious, but who's like a soul of the team, heartbeat guy? Like who's an important hitter for Tennessee?
I mean, the obvious answer is Christian Moore, right? I mean, the guy has, at least in our conversations, kind of started to inch his way into like, do we need to talk about this guy as the player of the year? That kind of stuff, right?
Which, yes, we do.
Yeah, yes. Right. But I actually find it interesting when they get at the bottom of the lineup, when they get something from guys like Dean Curley and Cal Stark to turn that lineup over. We saw it in the Florida State game to start this whole thing for them, where the key moment was Cannon Peebles pinch hitting at the bottom of the lineup and drawing a walk, which turned the lineup over. And I think everyone, Link Jarrett included, like once that lineup flipped over, was like, oh boy, we're in trouble here. Mm-hmm. So that bottom of the lineup is key for Tennessee because there's just really nothing you can do when they've lined up after that. Christian Moore, Blake Berg, Billy Amick. I mean, good luck pitching to those 3 guys back to back to back. So to me, that's a little bit of a canary in the coal mine. If the bottom of the lineup is doing things for Tennessee, like I think you're kind of toast because you just have to assume the top of the lineup is going to get it done, and you can pitch a little more to the bottom of the lineup. But if they're part of everything happening for Tennessee, I'm just not really sure there's any team in the country that could slow them down.
Yep.
Go ahead, Fitzy. Who's a player on Tennessee that's top of mind? A hitter, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, I've been so impressed with Kavares Tears. Just this is a dynamic talent, and I know he's not a finished product, but boy, just the the raw ability just leaps off the field. I mean, what an exciting player. Obviously, that catch he made the other day in center field was incredible. You know, and then a day after, was it whatever, one game after, Hunter Ensley made a similar catch to the other gap, crashed, both these guys crashing into the walls, just like looking like, you know, all out football players. You know, just he's awesome. I just think the bat speed, the athleticism, you know, the foot speed, the whole thing. Just love watching him. You know, and eager to see what he can do here on the big stage in the finals.
Yep. I think I'm with you, Joe, that I think the answer for me is Christian Moore. And I'll say for this reason, the one time Tennessee has looked vulnerable here. Now, I guess Florida State game, they were vulnerable in that game, a lot of self-inflicted damage. But game 2 of the Super Regional against Evansville, Christian Moore is DHing. He gets an at bat. He has the final at bat of the game with a chance. He just didn't look right. He looked injured. Now, he did play second base the next day. He's played second base every day since. But when he was DHing and just looked a little compromised, that was the most human Tennessee has looked to me throughout this tournament. You know, and I guess in the Florida State game here too, but I can't unsee the comeback, because at the end of that game, it was almost like Tennessee just put their foot in the ground and said, we're done here. Like and Florida State's bullpen was helpless to stop it. And so Christian Moore is interesting to me. I will say, I think I often say, you know, Moore, Burke, Amick. No offense to Billy Amick, but I really think it's Moore and Burke. Like, as far as like, there's a Amick feels like a big leaguer and he's so dangerous. But as far as the quality that bats, Moore and Burke is next level. Like Blake Burke's improvement year over year. We've said this many times on the podcast this year. It's remarkable how much he's improved his game.
Hit 205 with 5 home runs in SEC play last year.
Goodness gracious.
That's
nuts. Joe, take us to A&M. Who's a hitter for A&M that stands out to you?
Well, I mean, there's so much intrigue about Jace Laviolette and what he's going to be able to provide. I think that's so much of what A&M is going to be able to do, right? We know he's not going to be, like, hamstring injuries don't disappear. Like, we know he's not going to be 100% Jace Laviolette, but is he a little better? Like, is he a little less compromised? Can he move a little bit? I think that's going to be a factor. And also, I mean, I think defensively as much as offensively, because he can stand still and hit, you know, just fine. Maybe not just fine, but, you know, to a pretty high percentage of his ability. But if Tennessee's just pounding the ball to right field, and they've got some lefty, you know, Blake Burke, Dylan Dreiling, like, I mean, they've got left-handed hitters that can really impact the baseball. Having him run around right field seems like a nightmare for A&M, because he's not going to get to balls quickly. You know, he's probably going to be looking to, if he can, like, toss the ball off to, you know, or, you know, allow someone to come get a ball that maybe he should be getting in a normal scenario. So how able he is to move around, as simple as that sounds, I think is among the biggest, most important factors for A&M.
Yep.
Guys, Texas A&M has 1 home run in Omaha in 3 games. Only 3 games.
Yeah.
But it's Caden Sorrell, the freshman. I think he's a key guy, certainly. Gavin Grahovic, speaking of freshmen.
Wow.
You know, especially if Laviolette's banged up, which he is. I mean, you need your stars to elevate, and Grahovic's one of those guys. And it seemed like he, you know, I don't know the exact numbers on this, Joe, but it seemed like he wasn't playing his best down, you know, leading into this thing. Maybe fighting it a little bit. Looked better, I thought, the other day. But I mean, that's a key guy. You know, I mean, you need that guy to be a dude here. And we talk about that all the time. Your best player really, you know, got to step forward in the biggest moments, and he's as talented as they get. But, you know, there's some growing pains. Again, not a finished product, but boy, it's exciting.
Yep. I agree with you guys. Tennessee's so star-laden that if you're A&M, Grahovic and Laviolette have to be in the mix here. I do think, like, I'm going to pick 3 players. The graduate transfers in the middle of the A&M order are so, I just think it's genius roster construction by Jim Schlossnagel, where it's next level roster construction. You've got the stars at the front, and then, you know, you've got Hayden Schott, who's been really, you know, ever since the knee injury, he's just been Rake City. It's crazy. And
Ted
then
Burton.
Jackson Appel. Yeah, Ted Burton. I was going to ask you guys, I couldn't think of Burton's first name. And well, of course, because it's Ted. It's a first name from the 1950s.
True,
Fitzy. Yeah.
They're not making a lot of Teds anymore.
Take that, Cahill.
Yeah, God bless it. Yeah, it's excellent. Two of the great Teds of this generation. So I think those 3 guys are really important. Let's do pitching. Joe, who's a Tennessee pitcher that's really critical to the series?
AJ Causey.
Yeah.
Because I just don't, they've been so quick with the hook on Stamos, and these games obviously are so important. I just can't see, even if things are going well, I can't see them really trying to get cute with Stamos's usage. I think it's going to be a quick hook for him, and then it goes to Causey, and it didn't go great last time out. And that's the first time that had happened in a while, where it just wasn't working against Florida State. Now, if you want to play the odds, then chances are he's better this time around, just because he has been so excellent for them. But one of the reasons why the Stamos thing is a little bit tricky for them is if Stamos doesn't get more than a couple of outs, Causey can't finish the game, even if he's good, right? And so you have to find someone else. And they've got those guys, right? I mean, they're not short on pitching, but Causey giving you 5 or 6 as opposed to 3 2/3 is a huge difference in the way things set up for them.
Yeah, that's a good call. And Drew Beam, obviously, we're not, we're not doing anything special with these answers, but I mean, how good was Drew Beam the other day? He was outstanding. I mean, he hadn't had an awesome year considering his track record. He's had a good year.
Yeah.
He's been fine, right?
Yeah, 4 and change ERA, but for how famous he is, that's
very famous.
Yeah.
But I mean, I thought against North Carolina, he looked like a guy who deserved to be famous. Now, it wasn't like a dominant outing, but it was very good, and he held the fastball velocity, and he located and did all the Drew Beam things, mix and match. But I have a feeling we're going to see him do something pretty special out here.
So I'm going to go Kirby Cannell, because even though Snead and Combs are the better stuff relievers, it feels like when Tennessee's backed into a corner, that's where they go. Yeah. And it's just so interesting because last year, Kirby Cannell they could not get him out of games fast enough. Like, it was like, I don't even know if it was a full hitter per, it's like, get him in, get him out. And now this year, it's like, give him the ball and let him cook. And and maybe that's more towards the end of the season here, but man, it just feels like when the game is getting uncomfortable, that's who's getting the ball for Tennessee.
He's thrown 3 times as many innings this year as he did last year. Last year was 15 1/3 innings in like 30 appearances or something.
Crazy.
It was, and it reminds me a little bit of the way LSU used Riley Cooper last year, where he hadn't had a major, he wasn't a go-to guy necessarily leading up to even his time at Arizona. And then last year we get here and it's like, oh, as it turns out, they trust him more than they trust anybody else. And it really paid off. Cannell feels pretty similar, not just because they're lefties with underwhelming stuff and not traditional bodies for college baseball players.
That college lefty you run out there like a Brandon Eisert for Oregon State or somebody that just like he's just high level of trust and comfort, and you get him in this stage in this ballpark especially, and those guys just feel like they always if you got one of those guys, it just matters, man. It just matters out here.
Fitzy, just when you get to the press box today on the nonsense tracker, I'd like plus points awarded for Riley Cooper reference and the Brandon Eisert reference.
I'll take it under advisement.
I'm nominating that. Yes,
I think you're a little too thirsty for the points here. Gotta let the game come to you.
Riley Cooper he played on 3 college teams. He led all 3 of them in appearances. I'm so here for that. But hey, let's do A&M. Joe, who's an A&M chucker?
I'm fascinated to see what we get from Chris Cortez this time around. First appearance here went well. Second time did not go well. He threw 8 pitches. All of them were balls, and then that was it. And I suspect that was less, the hook there was less because they were like, okay, this is not working, although it wasn't. And more just like, all right, we're kind of in control here. We've got Aschenbeck still out, Stewart's getting hot. We have options. Let's not mess around here. Let's save your bullets for later in the series. But also, what if it's not, right? Like, what if this, for some reason, what if he's just, in a situation where he's just not as sharp as he was earlier in the season, whether it's fatigue or whatever. That's going to be big, because there's so much of what A&M's trying to do here is, okay, the Prager start, we're going to lean pretty heavy on him and try to minimize bullpen. And then whatever we do after that is going to be heavy Cortez, Aschenbeck. Yep. And obviously Cortez is a big part of that. And he just can't repeat what we saw last time out if A&M's going to successfully do that.
Well, and it's interesting because, his previous outing out here started similarly, right? It was a couple walk HBP or walk, whatever it was, and they let him pitch his way through it. And the second time, they're like, no, we've seen enough 2 hitters. Like, let's pull the string or pull the plug, and it it worked out for him in both cases. Yeah. But yeah, I'll be curious to see how they treat that. I mean, can he go out there and throw strikes from the beginning of the outing? I think that's very important. I am curious to see how they're going to do this. With Ryan Lampkin now. He only threw 7. Justin, I can keep doing that. God, I got a problem. Justin Lampkin.
Who is Ryan Lampkin?
I don't know. I don't know who I'm thinking of. He only
is that who beat you in the spelling bee in 6th grade?
Maybe that's it. He only threw 70 pitches. on Wednesday. But I mean, we're talking about maybe using him on Sunday and 3 days rest. I don't know. I mean, like, how are they going to just go back to using him as a little opener, or are they going to save him for a potential Monday? Who do you open with, or how does that go? How do you piece it together? I'm fascinated to see how they approach it. But their bullpen's been great.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and it's not just Oshtenbeck, although he's such a security blanket back there. Again, Brandon Iser, whatever, that lefty that just gets outs.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, the breaking ball guy they brought in there in the middle to bridge the game the other day, he was outstanding. So
Yep.
yeah, they got a lot of nice pieces.
Yeah, I'd say Prager just feels so critical. Like because A&M's injured and Tennessee's so good, it feels like A&M to win this series has to do something to get Tennessee out of themselves. We have seen Tennessee, even though it's not the 2022 team, they can run hot still. Christian Moore in that Florida State game was, the umpire showed great discretion in allowing him to remain in the game. Like he runs hot, and that's part of what makes him great too. So I think Prager start. In my mind, I'm having a tough time finding a scenario where Prager struggles and A&M still wins this series.
That's essential.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so if you want to hear more from D1 Baseball and the D1 Baseball podcast, we're here all year round. It's Kendall, myself, Fitzy, Joe Healy, breaking down teams, talking with coaches, keeping you updated on all things college baseball. You can hear exclusive SEC content with the Highway to Hoover podcast, ACC content with ACC baseball, etc. You've got Joe and Mark Etheridge on the Highway to Hoover podcast. You've got the great Darren Vaught and Danny Graves on ACC baseball, etc. You download the D1 Baseball podcast. It's part of the SiriusXM podcast network. Right now on the SiriusXM app or wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss a minute.
What are you finding, Aaron? On he's Googling Ryan Lampkin
right now, trying to figure out LinkedIn. Who we're talking about. Are you going to connect with Ryan Lampkin?
There's a guy out there, but not our guy.
Okay, good.
Okay. Sorry, Runes, didn't mean to derail the show there.
Yes. Okay, Joe, here's my question. Now you're going to put your coaching hat on. Maybe you already have it on. If you are game planning, so the theme is Achilles heel, vulnerabilities. So if you're A&M game planning for Tennessee, what is the area of, obviously these are two elite teams. They were top 3 teams most of the year. We're nitpicking here, but what's the vulnerability that you want to attack at Tennessee?
When Tennessee, the rare time Tennessee has not looked like itself, it's when they get off schedule. They looked vulnerable against Florida State, and some of that was defensive stuff that I don't think is going to be replicated, but they also got off schedule on the mound. So if I'm Texas A&M, it's a focus of, to use a phrase that Jay Johnson Ellis used last year, do our deal. And that's, if you're A&M's lineup, like, just go up there and just fight. Because if we can force them to cycle through multiple guys, we're going to have a lot better chance here. Tennessee wants to do it, where Stamos throws 2 and Causey throws 7, and then that's all she wrote. A&M's job is going to be to force them off of that. Now, the options coming out of the bullpen aren't necessarily easier, but we just know inherently, if you force a team to go to a bunch of different options, you're more likely to find one that you like. One guy that's not having his day, or that you're just a good matchup for whatever reason. So I think it's simple for A&M. Just do what you do offensively, and I think you're going to be in decent shape and give yourself a chance to win.
Fitzy, I want to have you do the opposite. So you are Tennessee. What's the vulnerability for A&M that you want to attack?
Well, you said it earlier. For them, they got to get length out of Ryan Prager in order to win this thing. It feels like, if as good as their bullpen is, I just think that's the number one most important thing, is they need Prager to be good. And so if you're Tennessee, I think you take the same approach that Joe's talking about. You work counts. You try to, get him out of the game as soon as you can, even though their bullpen's really good. But I just think the more that A&M has to ask out of their bullpen, the harder it's going to be for them, because, they're undermanned there. You don't have Shane Sadeo especially. And so that seems like the key is we got to attack Prager patiently.
Yep.
I think there's some element to this start, because this is Ryan Prager's last start. Right. We just know that. Yeah. I think there's also some element that I agree with you generally speaking, but I think there's also some element of, like, Tennessee's either going to hit Prager or they're not.
Good point.
Because I have a feeling that Prager's, unless it goes disastrously, he's going to be out there for like 120.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, and he's a pretty efficient guy. So if you're Tennessee, like, I agree, but also you're going to have to solve Prager. Like, you're not just going to boot him from the game. Probably
that's better said. You're just going to have to solve him. Maybe it's not a matter of grinding him down with the pitch count thing. Maybe it's just a matter of, you just got to hit him.
Yeah, they just got to beat him.
Yeah. Yep. I love that. All right. So we got about 2 minutes left. So Joe, I'm going to have you take Tennessee, you're going to take A&M. What are the implications of winning this thing for Tony Vitello and the Tennessee program? What is winning this national? It's hard to get here, right? Like, it's hard to find the opportunity to win a national title. It takes a lot of things that have to come together perfectly. What does winning this do for Tennessee?
Well, for this team specifically, I do think, I don't mean to be hyperbolic, and we can have this conversation on a podcast coming up, but I mean, I think it puts them in that group of, like, at least in this modern era of college baseball, the greatest national champions we've had. They'd have 60 wins if they finish this thing off. That's incredible. It reminds me a little bit of, if they pull this off, I think it's going to remind me a little bit of 2019 Vanderbilt, where they won that thing and we look back on it and we're like, it was Vanderbilt all along. Like, these guys were just a cut above. This is one of the greatest champions we've seen. I think Tennessee is probably in that mix if they win this. And, you know, for all of the, and in the big picture, for all of the criticism Tony and this program has gotten over the last several years, scoreboard, you know, like we won the national title.
Yeah.
Fitzy, take A&M's perspective. Jim Schlossnagle, by the way, 7th trip to College World Series, an incredible record.
And he's had success out here. They've won games. They've reached Final Fours when he's at TCU and he's at A&M. But now, you know, this is a different step. I just think when you look at where their program is, with the amount of resources that they have, you know, the fact that they've already got a great ballpark and they're looking to spend tens of millions of dollars more on it, with all the NIL advantages that I'm sure they have. I'm not privy to the ins and outs of that, but come on, their purse is incredibly deep. You've got an elite coach. You've got it all going for you. Talent base, in-state, you know, whole thing. If they win this thing, put them over the top. I mean, like, who's going to stop this program? It just feels like you got everything going for you. And you know, I think their profile is as good as any program in the country.
Yep. Well said. By the way, for turn of phrase or word of the day, I mean, we had a Brandon Eisert reference, a Riley Cooper reference. We started the podcast with a plum. Canary in the Coal Mine made an appearance, and Do Our Deal also made an appearance. I think it's a W for both of you guys. I don't mean to pander, but yeah, win-win. So that is it. We're going to wrap here. Everyone enjoy the finals. We will crown a national champion in baseball in the next 2 to 3 days. That is it. Enjoy, and we will catch you next time on the D1 Baseball Podcast.